Om Shuklam Varadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanaye Sarvavigno Pashantaye Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murtiveda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sah Viryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So nice to see you all. Recognize most faces. So anyway, so the topic of today's talk is so whenever I used to hear this word devotion, first response I would feel within myself, reaction, would be feeling intimidated, because when you think of devotion, the first reaction you always feel inadequate, really. Because devotion means then we think of all the great devotees, in our tradition, in our culture, in our mythology. And when you think of all these big devotees and their stories, so naturally it all seems like romantic to us, for good, for idealism. But where do I fit in? Yeah. So am I even capable of such kind of devotion that is always described, in the great souls? And forget, am I capable? Will I ever be able to have it and experience it? And these are the kinds of things that we think about. So, got me to thinking, what exactly is devotion? What is this thing that we talk about? Is devotion, is it cognitive? Is it some kind of a thought process? Or is it some kind of a emotion? Of course, it's not the physical body. That's all that is left. Is it? Obviously, it's not thinking. It's not purely cognitive thinking thing. Is it emotion? Just devotion equate to emotion, which is one way people often, tend to think. Then, if it is emotion, then that means, does it mean that in order to be devotional, I have to be emotional? Emotions, that means I can't have devotion. Is it that kind of a thing? After all, what are emotions? So, you think about emotions. Now, there are certain emotions which are considered as basic, primary emotions, basic emotions. So, fear. It's a very, it's a, something is a response, that occurs right away. It's a right brain response. If you want to get into brains, right brain, left brain, it's an instant response. Or sadness, you know, or anger. These are very fundamental emotions. Joy, feel. Let's look at this. Let me ask you, in your mind, just visualize these emotions in your mind. Just see what happens, what comes to your mind when I say these words: anger, sadness, anxiety, worry, fear, joy. So when I say these words, we all get you recollect certain emotional states that we have experienced. And we can safely assume that most of us experience similar kinds of, at least similar responses in our own minds. We've all experienced these things. Now, I will say this, I will say a word, devotion. Close your eyes and so visualize, think of devotion. Now, what happens? What happens? So, do you get some kind of a response inside, like we got for anger, for fear, for anxiety? These kinds of things. Does it sound familiar? No, it doesn't. So, each one, do you think we all think the same thing when I said the word devotion? Or we thought of different things? Just some safe assumption is that we thought of a variety of things. So when I say devotion, so somebody thinks of Mirabai.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Somebody thinks of Hanumanji. Somebody thinks of their friend who sits in front of the altar and cries with tears flowing down her cheeks. Somebody doesn't know what to think. So we get varieties of responses. What does that mean? That means devotion is not an emotion. It's not a particular emotion. It's not a particular primary emotion that we know what it is. Like we know all the emotions. So what is it then? It's not thinking. It's not a particular emotion. Then how would you describe devotion? Think about it a little bit. So what I would say is devotion is mind that is made up of, is a sentiment that is evoked in one's mind, in one's psyche. A sentiment which is complex, which is made up of a variety of thoughts and emotions. So there is affection. There's something I'm devoted to. So there has to be some affection. There is respect. There is reverence. There is love. So there is variety of emotions that go together to constitute this particular sentiment called as a devotion. And it is also in the context of a relationship. It is like love. Devotion is often compared to love. So the word for devotion in Sanskrit is bhakti. So parama prema swarupa bhakti. They will say bhakti is special form of love. So what is this special we'll look at? And the word love is always used to equate it to devotion. Should love God. It's not an easy thing to do. It's easy to say. I can't even love my own spouse properly, or my neighbor, or some. Then how am I going to love this entity, which then I define as being unknowable? So God is supposed to be unknowable, and I'm supposed to love this unknowable entity. How I can't love known things? How am I going to love unknown things? I'm not going to love unknown things. It's impossible. So it's just except I imagine all kinds of stuff in my mind. So here, if I say something like love, which is, you can't really give a single word, it's not a single emotion, but it's a complex sentiment, which has varieties of emotions associated with it. And this love is something, suppose your son comes to you, you have a teenager, and this teenager comes to you, your son. He's now, say, 18 or 20 years old, and says, Dad, I have a question to ask you. What is it? I'm an adult now. I'm 20 years old. And then I would like to know, what is this love? So when I was young, I used to ask you, and you used to tell me, you wait till you're an adult. Now I've become an adult. So I have this question for you now. Please tell me. I want to explain. I'm old enough. You think I'm old enough to love? I said, of course you're old enough. So how do I know, experience this love? So what will you say? What will you say as a father? So of course, as a father, you say, please ask your mother. Why don't you check this with your mother? So she's better at these things, whatever. So you pass him off to your mother. So then he goes to his mother. So just love. Do you love dad? Yes, of course I love him. So can you please tell me what is this particular emotion? And I also want to know what is love. So she says, well, it's not something that you can really describe. But then when you now know, when you love somebody, you will know it. This is another funny answer, You will know somehow that it's the right thing. Hey, how am I going to know? If I don't know the emotion, how am I going to know that this is what is love? No, no. So that can I do something in order to experience love? No, there's nothing we can really do to experience love. Love is something that has to happen. Has to happen. Oh, so really? Will it happen to me? Yes, it's going to happen to you. How do you know that? How do you say it's going to happen? No, no, because it is a sentiment. So that is there in every human being. It is their potential in all. And when the environment is right, so now you give a whole complicated explanation. When the environment is right, the love manifests. Correct? Isn't this the truth? Okay. When the environment is right, then the love that is there in its potential form in your heart is going to manifest. Yeah. It is going to actualize. And then you will know. Then you will say, oh, okay. What is the proper environment? That's a topic for another talk. Anyway. So that somehow you answer some question. Now, devotion is something like that. Devotion also requires a certain environment. Requires a certain environment. And it is there in all. How do you know it is there in all? How do I know? Oh, because I am a human being. After all, what is love? Love is a sentiment that arises in the context of another person, another being. And so the devotion is a sentiment that arises in relating, when you're relating to the Lord. To the Lord. It's a relationship between an individual and the Lord. Who's this Lord? Well, however we think of the Lord, doesn't really matter at this point. But so, however, whatever that God word means to me, however I visualize that being, so there is a relationship between the cause, between the effect and the cause, between the source from have come. So between the creator and the created, I see myself as a created being, and then there is a creator. And it's a relationship between the creator and the created. In our tradition, so we look upon the creator as the total, as a totality. It's a relationship between the total and the individual, or in other words, between who's the devotee and the Lord. Okay. So there, between these two, it's a relationship after all. A relationship to understand. How do I understand this relationship? So devotion is a relationship between one devotee and the Lord and his or her Lord. I understand this relationship as I understand any relationship. To know what devotion is, really, we have to know what are relationships, how much we understand a relationship. What is a relationship after all? So relating, I relate to this world, correct? Yeah. Relating to something the same as a relationship. So relating is not a relationship, really speaking. We relate. We relate to objects. We relate to the world. Even animals relate. Even animals relate, An animal will relate to the world. It relates to objects. It knows what is food, what is not food, what is to be eaten, what is not to be eaten, who's an enemy, who's a foe, who's a friend, who to run away from, who to be comfortable with. It relates to the world. The more you know the environment, the better you're able to relate to it. But then it doesn't have a relationship the way we understand relationships. Okay. It does relate in some kind of a way, but it relates based on its own needs, based on its own instincts and its needs. So what is it in the environment that fulfills my needs, and what is it that doesn't fulfill my needs? That is the depth of its relationship. It has no concepts of duties, of expectations, of disappointments. When one duck doesn't complain, the other duck, it doesn't understand me. You don't listen to me. So you have never understood me. We've been married for 40 years. So all these kinds of things, the ducks don't talk to each other. I see in my back, there are ducks. So they're walking up and down. They communicate with each other. They relate to each other. So there's a lot of interactions go on. But they don't have these kinds of quack fightings. They don't have like we do. So they relate to the world, but they don't have any deep relationships with expectations and so on. But when we relate, we can also relate like that as human beings, where we relate to people. So, in terms of our own needs. So, who is the person who fulfills my needs? To what extent they do? To what extent they don't? How much they can be manipulated? We can really categorize people. So, like customers, if you're in a business and then you are trying to sell something, you're sitting in your shop and people are going up and down the mall, and then you look at each one. What do you see? You see a potential buyer. Is a potential buyer or not a buyer? They can tell. The minute you walk in, they can tell. So accordingly, you decide how much time you're going to spend with them, or you don't. So you don't want to waste time on somebody who's not going to buy anything from you. So it's purely need based. This is also relating to people. But you can't do this with your wife. That's different. Okay. So there, in order for me to relate to a person, so what is it that makes a relationship rich and fulfilling? In order to relate to somebody, the more I understand, okay, just think of this. The more I understand a person, the better I'm able to relate to them. Isn't that so? The less I understand a person, the more my relationship is centered on my own needs. It's more self-centered, really. In order for a relationship to grow, fulfilled, and satisfactory, I have the more I know the other person, the better I'm able to relate to them. Because in that understanding, I don't misinterpret. So communication becomes better. I don't I don't ascribe wrong intent to the other person. So the better I know the person, the better I am able to relate to anything. The less I know, the more incomplete and frustrating is the relationship. Now just think, this is true also for Bhagavan, for the Lord. It has to be true. Is how I understand the Lord. How I understand. Normally, so what kind of a stand do we take? So this is who I am. You want to relate to me, this is who I am. You relate, you see. What you see is what you get. I am being very open to you. So what you see is what you get. Is all not true. This is all nice dialogues. But really is not true. So you have to be open. and communicative and be transparent is not what you see, what you get. This is not the way to relate to a person. One has to, normally we don't reveal ourselves to anybody fully.
Is it because we don't even know
Yeah.
ourselves?
Partly we don't know ourselves, partly we relate the way we are going to be accepted by the other person. I relate to people, I present myself. How do we present ourselves to people? Differently, depending on who it is. Because I want to be accepted by everybody. So depending on what aspect of me is acceptable, that's what I'm going to present to that person. I'm not going to present a part of me which is not may not be acceptable. So it's always selective. It's always selective. It's never complete. That's the idea. Whether it's right or wrong, that's another issue. But at this point, it's never complete. It's always partial. But to relate properly, I need to understand what I'm relating to, so that I can understand, I can relate in a realistic and appropriate way. When we relate to the Lord, so we have our own understanding of what the Lord is. We even have a problem, I tell you. In our tradition, we see this. So whenever they are building a temple, this is a typical issue that comes about. What deity to put there? You know, should we have Shiva or should we have Vishnu? This is a big question. So the Shaivites want one Shiva there, living lingam. The Vaishnavas want some Vaishnava form there. And the both have genuine difficulty with the other one. It's not a simple difficulty. The genuinely this is Lord means this form. Any other form becomes difficult to relate to. Just imagine this now, okay? I'm having difficulty even between two forms, both of which I acknowledge as God. Just look at this, okay? And then my tradition teaches me you look at God on everything as Bhagavan. How am I going to look at everything as Bhagavan when I'm having such difficulty with two forms, both of which I acknowledge as Bhagavan? But then I can't figure. It's like, it's something like, so a lady or a man, either side. So this fellow, so she looks at her husband, okay, and she sees that he is a. She sees him only as the husband, because after all, when I am relating, this is her logic. When I'm relating to this man, he's my husband. So I should relate to him as a husband, as a wife to a husband. I'm not his mother. Naturally, I'm not his mother. I'm not his daughter. I'm not his grandmother, whatever. I am his wife. So, and he's my husband. So this man, so is he a good husband or is he a bad husband? There's a one way to relate. But then if I think like that, am I relating to the whole person or am I relating to just one facet of the person? Because this person is also a father. This person is also a son. He's also a brother. He's also so many things. So the more I know of who he is, what he is, the better I'm going to relate to him. Not necessarily as a mother. Just because I understand him as a son doesn't mean I relate to him as a mother. But because I understand him as a son, I can relate to him better as a wife. Correct? That's true for everybody. The more complete I understand a person, the better I am able to relate and understand my relationship to that person. That's the nature of relationships, okay? It is. Now, if I am relating to the Lord, let us say I come to the Lord. How do I understand the Lord? I have to understand the Lord now. Is he a provider? Do I look upon him as a provider? I mean, whatever I need, the Lord should provide. We know the Lord provides everything. But then in relating to the Lord, I only see him as somebody who gives me what I need or gives me what I want. Then what happens? So sometimes he doesn't do that. Sometimes he does it. Sometimes he doesn't do it. So now the problem is either he is being arbitrary or I am being, so my expectations are wrong. There's only two possibilities. Okay. So generally is always he's being arbitrary. So because he only has preference for his devotees, all kinds of things, then I have problem. Why has the Lord forsaken me? Who doesn't complain about that? So the Lord forsakes people. He is not reliable. You can't depend on him. It's true. All naturally, it all follows. It's all follows. How am I going to relate to that? So if the Lord is something who is going to just fulfill my needs, whether they are reasonable or not, with my expectation, then I'm going to be disappointed in that relationship. So we understand the Lord usually as some kind of a powerful person, being, individual, who's there to fulfill my reasonable and unreasonable desires, just because I happen to pray or do something. It's some kind of a trade or bargain or bribery or whatever we call it. Doesn't work. So I have to understand what is Bhagavan, really speaking, how we understand the Lord. So in looking at this, we see in relationships as we grow, one thing which is very fundamental in our growth process for every human being, as we grow, we first have no awareness of ourselves or of our environment. When we are born, we just have needs. We feel hungry, we feel thirsty, we are comfortable, we are uncomfortable, we are dependent, we need to be taken care of and protected and nurtured. And so the environment provides us with that, if it does. So the mother is there, the father is there, caretakers are there. So I am taken, my needs are fulfilled. But then the way my needs are fulfilled is not predictable or reliable, because the people around me are not perfect. They are fallible. They're fallible. They're not infallible. They make mistakes. So I'm hungry, and the mom thinks I'm sleepy, or I'm sleepy. Mom thinks I'm hungry. So this miscommunication is there. Not on the, is it the baby's part? No, or the mother's part. Both parts. Neither the baby can communicate nor the mother can figure out right away. It's all a learning process. So as the environment becomes unpredictable, so my trust in the environment goes down, goes down naturally, because it is not responding to my needs. So my whole childhood goes like that, in some degree of, so trust and mistrust, like that I give. And the environment, my caretakers, people who are supposed to be infallible, become fallible. As I get older and I become cognizant of that, then I turn to others outside my immediate environment, other adults. So, like teachers, like uncles, someone who is outside the immediate family. Because I figured out the immediate family you can't totally depend on. Yeah. Sometimes they'll give you what you want, sometimes they won't give you what you want. Maybe the outside ones are better. So that's when the kids always go through that, the aunts are always better than the mothers. So because they are more responsive, they give you more and things like that. But slowly that also wears off. Other adults wear off. Then you meet somebody, and then you think this person is now going to, because this is the only person who thinks you're great. So then this person is going to now fulfill all my needs. Then that also becomes a process. So like that, so I realized that there's nobody around here on this beautiful earth that is going to be predictable and reliable in fulfilling my needs. Then somebody says, no, no, there is somebody who's outside this world, this other person up in the sky, above the eye up in the sky, somewhere is sitting, and he is going to fulfill. He loves you. Oh, really? So I hear nobody loves me. This now somebody is there. How do you know he loves me and all that? But anyway, no, you just accept what I'm telling you. He loves you. He told me that he loves you, and so you just believe. Better believe it. Then you start believing it. Okay, maybe this person loves me, and then all kinds of promises, etc. This we know the whole story. Then this person also you start praying. When I was young, this is true story. It's not a false. It's true. It's not a story. It's true. So that in school, so some subjects are easy, some are difficult. Then you have to go for exam. So when you go for exam, you pray. Parents also say you better pray. So the less you study, the more you pray. Naturally, it's a simple rule. The less you say, the more you pray. So then at the morning, I'll go and pray, 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 pray. So go and take the exam. So you pass. You're happy. Oh, thank God. You come there, you thank the Lord and everything. Next time, again, exams have a way of recurring. So again you pray. Hey, somehow you passed. Even though I didn't study, I passed. Next month, again, exam comes. I same pray. Now, little bit you take for granted, God. So next time, again, you pray and go. This time, I failed. I failed. Oh, so maybe God was busy or something. Something miscommunication happened. Then next time again, little bit of repetition. You pray, because maybe something happened like this. What is that coincidence? So this next time also you failed. Now it becomes a big problem. The second failure now. This once is a coincidence. Second time is not a coincidence now. It'll be second time is an incident. It's an incident, not a coincidence. And third time, someone is after you. There is some diabolical plot. You have to. This is I learned this from a James Bond movie. Remember? You remember, right?
Once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, three times is enemy action.
See, so that is so. This is the rule. First time is a happening. Second time is a coincidence. Third time is a plot. So now third time also exam comes. Now what do I do? Should I not pray? Just because two times God didn't respond. Third time, if I'm practical, I'll say, what, this is not working. But then I don't want to take a chance. So you end up praying. But your trust goes down. Definitely. Little bit, trust goes down. At least it's not so reliable as I thought. But still you have no choice. So you better just you hedge your bets and you pray. If we understand the Lord that way, as somebody who's infallible in terms of granting me what I want, but then that is not how we understand the Lord. It is not that the Lord, whether the Lord is, we understand Bhagavan. Bhagavan is a word for the Lord. I don't like to use the word Lord because it has certain meaning associated with it. So I use the word Bhagavan. So now Bhagavan is that, it's not that Bhagavan is he infallible or is he fallible. The question is, when I look around me at the universe, I find that so in the universe there are laws, there is an order, and the more I look at it, I recognize that this order is not fallible, it is infallible, because everything moves according to a certain order. So predetermined order, a pattern. There are laws, whether it's astronomy, whether it's physiology, is anatomy. Whereas in fact we have science because there is order. We have science because there is law. People think that science disproves the Lord. In fact, science proves the Lord. Because science, the very existence of science, is dependent on the existence of an order. It is not chaos around us. Even in chaos, there is order. There's a chaos theory. Somebody was one time explaining what is chaos theory. Question in my own mind was, if it is a theory, why are you calling it chaos? The fact that you are sitting and telling me about chaos theory, when you can theorize something, that means there is order there. It is not chaotic. In chaotic, you won't have theory. Yeah. So there is, so it is the order. It is the infallible that is Bhagavan. It is not whether Bhagavan is infallible. It is the infallible that what we see as the very order itself as manifest Bhagavan. Bhagavan manifests in the form of an order. And I recognize this, then I have to relate. When I relate to the Lord, and this is the totality, I look upon Bhagavan as the total and me the individual. So it is the individual relating to the total, which means the individual who can never be apart from the total, right? The total includes the individual. The total is not separate from the individual. But then, in order to relate, I separate myself out. I have to necessarily. Otherwise, I can't relate. The total. I am not separate from the Lord. But then, if I have to relate as an individual to the Lord, I have to separate as an individual. If I separate myself, then I'm not relating to the total. I am relating to an aspect of the total. Correct? It is just an aspect of the total in order to relate. Otherwise, because I have separated myself out and I see myself as a created being, so that becomes the source, and I relate to the source, and I becomes an aspect of the source, and different aspects of the source are represented in the form of various deities. Like a person is the same, but then that person is a father, he's a mother, I mean, he's a father, he's a son, he's a husband, he's a friend. It's the same one person, who's different things depending on who he's the reference point. You shift the reference point and there is another person. A different person manifests. When the father comes into the picture, the son manifests. The son shows himself, reveals himself. The son manifests himself. When the child comes into the picture, the father is evoked. When the wife is in the room, the husband is evoked. When a friend walks in the door, the friend is evoked. When he thinks of the Lord, the devotee is evoked. That is what is evoking. Devotion has to be evoked. In order for me to evoke the devotion to evoke, I have to visualize the Lord. Whichever form doesn't matter, really. It is the process. Devotion is not about the form. Devotion is about the process. Do you think God really cares? You just imagine. Suppose God, and we are all puny little beings with all our great thinking. So do you think we can really fully think anything properly? No. If we did, we won't be in so much mess in our life. So is messy most of the time. So with this messy mind, I'm trying to visualize the Lord. Is it ever going to be right? So if you were the Lord, would you care? Would you really care? If you're the parent, as a parent, your child looks upon you. Do you think your child looks upon you correctly? As a person who understands you? Even your spouse doesn't understand you. You don't understand yourself. No way your kid understands you fully. No, one day the kid will say, "Mom, you don't love me. One day you love me. You don't care of me. You're not buying me what I want." They have 100 different complaints they have. But do you really care? Does it matter to you? Because it's the child thinking. You can relate to this so well. And you think God really seriously gets upset just because we don't think of Him in one particular way? Oh, no, no, no. These people worship me in so many forms. They make an idol of me. These people don't make an idol of me. And so these people these are my special people. This is all childish thinking. Even as a parent, you don't think this. You think really God thinks like this? I don't think anybody really believes this. Maybe some people believe it seriously. I don't know. But then it's difficult for me to visualize anybody seriously. Okay. So, irrespective of how we visualize the Lord, it doesn't matter, but it is the relationship. In that context, as I recognize the infallible in which I live, and I am a part of that total, and that a certain sentiment is evoked in me. In Ramayana, there is a Adhyatma Ramayana. There's a dialogue between Sri Rama and Shabari. You know, so in which he talks to her about bhakti sadhana. What are the means of bhakti, of devotions? What are the means by which I create this environment where devotion is evoked? Because he said you have to create an environment. What kind of an environment do I create? So like you tell your son, well, you have to have the right environment. What does that mean? Don't sit in your room all the time. You go out and meet people, be friendly, be honest, all kinds of things, whatever advice we give them. So because then you have to create a situation, right? Rama tells her the sadhana means by which that bhakta gets evoked. And in that means what he talks about? He talks about prayer. He talks about maturity. He talks about study, reflection, contemplation. These are the different means that we have in our spiritual pursuit. These are the things he talks about. Creating an environment where the devotion is evoked in a person. It's called bhakti sadhanas. So thus, it is a sentiment that has to be evoked. And one of the which is in the form of a prayer. We pray. Prayer is one means. Because what do we do in prayer? We invoke the Lord. We say we invoke the Lord. Whatever we understand as the Lord, we invoke. And when we invoke, it's not really a matter of we invoking something is not there. Like some magician. We have this power, this Shakti we have, by which we take an idol there. And by these mantras that we do, we invoke out of nowhere. Is that what happens? The Lord is there everywhere. Correct? Lord is there everywhere. When I invoke the Lord, it's not that, the Lord was having a nap there somewhere and I kind of pulled him down here, like that with my own prayer. It's not like that. Sometimes we visualize visualize these things, with Shakti, big Shakti. This Rishi, this person, he brought Shiva down, Poor thing, disturbed him from his whatever he was doing. Bhagavan is everywhere. When I invoke his presence, that means I recognize it. That's all. It's not that the Lord takes a trip and comes down to be in front of me. It is just that I recognize the Lord's presence in something which is already there. I didn't really invoke anything, literally. But what I did was I evoked. In invoking, I really evoked the devotee in me. It's like when you close your eyes and you think of your father, who gets evoked? The son gets evoked. When you think of the son, the father gets evoked. Just close your eyes. When you think of your neighbor, all your anger gets evoked. Yeah, it's not a big magic in this, This is simple dynamics of the mind. So the angry guy gets evoked. When I think of the Lord, sometimes, now just look back. If I visualize somebody who has to pass me in my exams and whatnot, then when I think of that Lord, who will get evoked? Either the disappointed guy, or the happy guy, or the whiny guy, you know. But if I understand properly that that's not what this relationship is about, really. And the more I understand, the more I learn to see Bhagavan in things, that divinity that we talked about earlier, the easier it is that environment becomes ripe, and then that devotee has to manifest, like the love has to manifest. Nobody can talk about it, nobody can do anything about it. But we all know it happens. And the reason it happens is because, so that is the nature of a human heart. This relationship is there, it's real. So between the creator, I see I'm a created being. I didn't create myself and bring myself here. So creator has to involve a creator. The individual is connected with the total. This is a fundamental relationship which is universal. We are all related to the same Lord in the same way. There's no differences here between people, whether we like it or not. Really. Even that guy, some guy who's the bad guy, does all wrong things, chooses to do all wrong things, creates misery around. Do you think his relationship with God is different than ours? Really, just think about it. You have two children. One becomes a great, gets educated, is successful, straightforward, law abiding. Other one becomes a jailbird, unfortunately. Goes in and out of mama's house. We call it uncle's house. But really speaking, relationship different as a mother, as a father.
Could be.
The relationship, you're still the parent, whether you like it or not. You will say that, this is my karma, but he is my son. That's all the difference. Yeah. Born with good karma and bad. This is good karma, this is bad karma. Both have to be fulfilled. Whatever, you will sit down and. But the fact remains that they are both my sons. God can't disown anyone. No. So we are all related the same way. There is nobody special here. Nobody is special. Oh, this is a wise man. This is another wise man. This is all God doesn't sit. I don't suppose. I don't suppose Bhagavan will think like that. You know. So so that is the context in which bhakta gets evoked, you know. And we create the environment in our spiritual pursuits. And then devotion manifests differently. How does it manifest? You know, love manifests in different ways. You know, Parama Prema Swarupa Bhakti, when they talk about the love of devotion, is different. There are different types of love. Love is not a uniform definition, you know. The nature of love depends on the context, obviously. It depends on who it is that the love is directed towards. My love for parents is different from children, is different than my love for my profession, is different from love for my art, love for my spouse. Love is based on arthakama pursuits. The word for love is prema. The word for love is also kama. It's the same word in English, but we have two different words. It's contextual. So the pursuit is the artha related. I have love for money, love for certain artha pursuits, worldly pursuits, love for success, then love for pleasure, arthakama, love for dharma. This love that we talk about, devotion, it's in the context of spiritual pursuit. Love for the Lord is different. So that is the context. And now this manifests, how does it manifest? A variety of ways. We can't say only by in a certain form. Who was a better bhakta, Mirabai or Hanumanji? Well, let us make a list. What did Mirabai do? What did Hanumanji do? What was his attitude? What was her attitude? How did he respond in this situation? How did she? This is how you analyze? No, it's different. Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnoho Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, and Atmanivedana. It's called Navavidha Bhakti. These are called different expressions of devotion. Shravanam, you know, Nachiketas. Just listening, studying about the Lord, singing the glories of the Lord, worshipping the Lord, meditating upon the Lord, the attitude of a friend, a guide, like Arjuna and Krishna, you know, or pursuit of oneself, one's essential self, as being non-separate from the Lord, you know, varieties of ways in which they are all devotion. And devotion also, like any other emotion, is not static. Any relationship. A relationship can't be static. It has to grow. It has to grow. As a child, I relate to my parents. As an adult, I relate to a parent. As an old man, I relate to my parent. You know. So when I'm 60 years old, suppose, and my father is 90, you know, I cannot relate to him the same way as I related when I was 5 years old and he was 35, correct? It has to change. So whether whoever it is, whether it is between parent and child, whether it is between spouse, whether it is between siblings. Of all relationships have to grow, have to mature. So this devotion, devotee relationship also matures in time. Chaturvida bhajante mam. You know that verse in Gita? Yeah. There are four types of devotees. People who worship me. They're all my devotees. The Lord says. The one who seeks things in life. He's a devotee. Because when he has to go to exam, he prays to me. At least that time he prays. You know. He's a devotee. He's not that he's not a devotee. Or there's another person who arthaha. This is arthaha. Then artharthi. He knows that in any endeavor, there is an element of grace. Not only certain endeavors where he is insecure, but in everything. That person is also a devotee. Then there's another person who sees me not as just somebody, a giver. There's no nepotism here, like, but as somebody who he wants to know, who wants to recognize, he wants to be close to. That's the jignasu, the one who seeks me out. And then finally, the one who sees, recognizes himself or herself as being non-separate from me. So this is a transformation. This is a growth process. Like any relationship has to grow, this relationship also needs to grow over time. So this is all various elements that need to be thought about, perhaps understood, if we really need to be comfortable with the idea of what is bhakti, what is a bhakta, and not simply imagine things and get intimidated. So I'll stop at this point. Maybe a few minutes we can have some questions and dialogue.
But when you say that, obviously you just talked about that, how you relate with what you're looking for. So given that obviously we go beyond asking God every time for whatever it is we want. So in our prayer, what is it we should be doing?
Yeah. So yeah, there's a question, good question. So then what should be the nature of the prayer? What am I really in prayer? What am I doing? What am I really doing in prayer? So it all depends. It all depends on where I'm coming from. So sometimes the prayer is all about, so what I want is all about what I want. Sometimes prayer is an acknowledgement. It's just an acknowledgement of all that is given to me. I don't look at what I don't have or what I need because I'm overwhelmed with what I have. I feel so fulfilled with what I have, what is given to me, that I don't notice what I don't have. So it's an acknowledgement of what has been given. Sometimes it is asking not necessarily for things, maybe for things. Please help me, I pray for the lottery. It's okay, few more dollars, maybe Bhagavan will give. It's not the beginning or the end of the world. Most people who win lottery blow it off, and end up in debt. You need to know this. Yeah. majority, more than 50%, end up in debts, the ones who win lotteries. Because they don't know how to manage it. God only gives to those who know how to manage money well. So sometimes the prayer is about that. Sometimes it is not about anything, really. Suppose you love somebody. You sit down, you have a meeting. You don't have a meeting, but suppose you meet up with somebody who you love. So sometimes what do you talk about? You know, Sometimes you don't have to talk. It's just the presence. Enjoy the presence of being with someone. And you can just be enjoying the presence of being with the Lord. You know, Prayer is like that. Prayer becomes a platform, really. Prayer becomes a platform on which I I feel the Lord is there with me, correct? Sometimes people have this question, when they want to do some prayers at home. This is how we do this all the time. People do this. So they to come, please can you come to the house? I want to do this prayer. First question we ask, how long will it take? How long will it take? Poor thing, you simply put him on the defensive. He is not wanting to come to your house for praying. You are the one who's inviting him to do a prayer, okay, for you. Then you're asking him, how long will it take? So he says, so if he's a little bit he will say, so, how much time do you have? you know? Or you'll say, no, this prayer takes 3 hours. 3 hours? Can you do in half an hour? you know Marriage ceremony, can you do in half an hour? Hey, these people have to live together for the next 50 years. Let us see if they can make it through 3 hours with me. If they can make it 3 hours with me, there is some chance. Half an hour, you want, what can I do? What commitment can they make to each other in half an hour? At least 3 hours you put them through it, they get so tired of the whole thing, they say it's not worth going through this again. So people come for the prayer, means they all come at Aarti time. They all come before the prasad is given out. They time it fully, properly, nicely, leave the house half an hour before Aarti starts. Suppose you want to meet up with your girlfriend. You do that? No, then you want to leave immediately. You're looking at the clock. You don't notice the time. If I am with someone that I love to be with, I don't notice the time. In praying, after all, who am I with? Who am I with? If I recognize that I am in the presence of the divinity that I have invoked, then, in fact, you don't notice the time. You really don't. You can sit through a Sahasra Nama Archana. 1008 names you can sit through. Otherwise, you will say, can we do with 16 names? Okay. So it is really how we relate to the whole setup. Yes.
Yeah, in Karma Yoga, you talk about selfless action.
Yeah.
In Bhakti Yoga, there's much discussion of selfless
Yeah.
bhakti or devotion or prayer. Instead of praying for yourself, is there any emphasis on selfless prayer?
So the question has to do with karma yoga, the role of connection between karma yoga and bhakti. So in plus, yataf pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam swakarmana tam abhyarcha siddhim vindati manavaha. So yataha bhutanam pravritti. So that from which all have come, all the beings have come. Yena sarvam idam tatam. That which pervades everything, that which is not, nothing is separate from whom. Swakarmana tam abhyarcha means worship that. May your all your actions be a form of worship. You know, such a person with such an attitude, you gain so the ultimate goal. Okay. So that means that from which everything has come and is sustained is the Lord. So it says, may actions be be dedicated to the Lord. This is interesting, though, it's important. Everybody does actions for the Lord, they say. Many a people battle have been fought claiming to be for the sake of the Lord. It's not that kind of a thing. Doing actions for Lord's sake. Bhagavan doesn't want anything, us to be his proxies. You know? Really, seriously? Can we seriously believe that the Lord, the infinite Lord, the one who lords over the whole universe and the creation, is going to, we are his proxies? He is incapable of doing his own work, you know, that we have to do for him on behalf of him. It's ridiculous, you know. But if I do the Lord, it is how the Lord manifests. And the Lord manifests, as we understand, as dharma, as the order. And among the varieties of order, there is also the what we call as the moral order, the universal order of right and wrong. There's a universal right and a universal wrong that applies for every being, every living being. Things like truthfulness, not hurting. He says, in order for me to recognize the Lord, I have to recognize what is the universal moral order. And I live by that. In living by dharma, I'm living not contrary to the Lord. That is the only way, best way I can honor the Lord in my actions, by doing what is the right thing for me to do, in keeping with what is right, morally right. Because I have choices. He says that is where karma yoga, and bhakti come together. Because it involves, bhakti aspect involves recognition of the Lord and my relationship to that. And how the Lord, how divinity manifests. And karma only is in reference to my actions based on my choices. Whether I choose to do things based on what I want and what I don't want, or I choose to do things based on what is right and what is wrong. That choice is given to me. And my exercising that choice properly, for that to happen, this karma and bhakti have to come together. So bhakti yoga is karma yoga. Karma yoga is bhakti yoga, which is what he says in this verse, really. That living by karma yoga is worshipping me. One more question? No?
Did you imply that Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga are the same or that they converge at some point?
Well, they are the same, really. Karma is with actions. See, there is no action without thinking, without motivation, without attitudes. When we say karma, we are not referring to just the physics here. This is karma. This is karma. And there's movement. But that's not what we're talking about. When we talk of karma, naturally, there is a person who's performing the action. There is a karmi. There is a person. That means there is thinking involved. There is motive involved. There is some basis involved. There are many things involved here, implied. And those all go into the realm of then my thinking process, my sentiments, etc. So he says, when my actions take into the Lord, the order, motive, all that, then it is beyond being just an action. So when a bhakta does something, it's like when you cook, at home, you're cooking. Cooking is cooking. You're alone at home and you're cooking. Or your whole family is there. Your children are there. Your grandchildren are there. You're cooking. It's not the same. It's not the same. Now you're cooking in the context of all that you love that is around you. That cooking is still cooking. But it is, you say, this has one ingredient which that other yesterday's cooking didn't have. Hey, what is this ingredient? It is love. So all these things we talk about, right? So karma is an action. But when there is Bhagavan, where there is my understanding, where there is dharma, where there is that sensitivity, where there is bhakti, then that is, you call it karma yoga or you call it bhakti. It is the same thing. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.